Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Presented to you by Netspend. Homegrown in Austin, Netspend has been a leading provider of consumer and business payment solutions for almost 25 years. From prepaid cards to mobile bank accounts to money movement services, Netspend connects people, brands, and payment products to deliver innovative financial solutions.
Welcome to another episode of Austin Tech Connect. This is the podcast about the future of Austin's technology community. My name is Tom Singer, and I am with the Austin Technology Council. And every single week at ATC, we try to engage local leaders in a lot of conversations to look to the future about how our ecosystem is going to thrive 5 years, 10 years, and 2 decades forward. And every week on this podcast, we bring someone from this tech ecosystem into a conversation to hear about their story, about their successes, and get a look into their crystal ball about what does the future look like. And today, we are joined by my friend, Laura Patterson. Laura has been around, she's been around the tech community for a long time, which is amazing because she's so young. It's amazing she's been around as long as she has. Her company is VisionEdge Marketing, which is a growth strategy firm, and it's 24 years old. She has worked with all types of tech companies over the last couple of decades. So Laura, welcome to Austin Tech Connect.
Thank you, Tom. I'm really excited to be here and, of course, to have a conversation with you. It has been wonderful knowing you over the decades.
Nice. I think we figured out we've known each other about 22 years, which means your company was still in its infancy because you've been around about 24 years now. And I have seen you work with a lot of tech leaders to really get their hands around marketing. So for those of you who don't know Laura, what she does is she helps companies of all sizes, especially in the B2B market, she helps them grow using a scientific approach because she believes that customer centricity is the only way your company's going to grow. So we're going to talk about that. So Laura, let's go back. Let's go into the Wayback Machine. How did you get started in marketing?
Okay. I love this question. And I'm just to give the people in Austin a little bit of context. I have been in Austin for 40 years. I came to Austin to work for this little itty bitty organization on Ed Bluestein, known as Motorola. I was in one of the portable buildings sitting outside of one of the fabs that had been brought up. I came to Austin. They brought me here because I worked in a startup that had application software in the medical device industry that ran on a Wang 2200. So for the people in the audience that know what that is, hello. And for those of you who don't, it's kind of a thing to kind of know if you want to know the history of technology. That was in Florida. And before that, I worked and the reason I got that job, I had worked in the insurance industry doing the science side of marketing. My job way back when, my title was Customer Relationship Manager, CRM for short. And it did not mean a piece of technology. It really was about how to grow the value and share a wallet of existing customers, and to do that to use science, to use data to help identify ways that would encourage more loyalty and more spend. So that was where my roots began. It really was about segmentation and data and understanding, measurement, all those kinds of things, and putting a strategy together, which was highly personalized. It was a personalized strategy, a whole nother conversation, and then executing on that strategy. And back in those days, Tom, we didn't have email. So a lot of it was done with phone call and direct mail.
and the fax machine. Remember that one?
The fax machine, direct, but even though, because this was a B2C company, people didn't have fax machines in their homes. So we relied on phone and direct mail and even events. So those were the 3 primary ways. And I know you can relate to that given your background in professional services too, on bringing people together. So that was my start.
I find it interesting that you were talking about 40 years ago, they were using in science and data as the underlying way to have the customer relationship and the marketing. That's something that is still top of mind today. Now, of course, we have all new technologies now that take the science and the data and bring them into marketing. But you were really ahead of your time if you were doing this 40 years ago. What was that like?
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up. So marketing science has been around a long, long time. And in some ways, I think we were more effective, even though we had fewer tools, because we started with asking the right questions. And I think today, people are inundated with data. They have so much data. It's like a fire hose coming at them. And it's coming from so many different platforms. Back then, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but back then we didn't have all these tools that had all this stored data. It just wasn't there. So you really had to know what it was that you wanted to know, right? So I think that's an important thing. Know what it is you need to know in order to really make the data help you get the insight so that you can make a critical and confident decision, ideally about your customers, which is back to being customer-centric. What is it you need to know about your customers to help you create value for them? That's our job as inside a company. How do we create value for them? By creating value for them, we create value for our organization. And that's really the purpose of marketing.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the show to talk is you do have this longevity of having seen marketing now for tech companies over so many years take on so many different changes, like you said, the new tools that are there and all this, and so much data that is now available at our fingertips. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the world of marketing, both positively and maybe some negatively, that tech companies should be thinking about as they're looking to their marketing strategy?
Okay, well, we'll come back to strategy in a moment, but I think one of the things that all marketers have been guilty of over the years is chasing shiny toys. And, the next thing that comes up, and right now we're chasing AI, right? That's a shiny new toy, and we're chasing that. And we chased websites, and we chased email, and we chased marketing automation platforms, and we chased social media, and we chased SEO. We have chased a lot of things, and we think it's all done and ready, whether it's pay per click or whatever it might be, or mobile marketing, whatever it might be. We think it's happening a lot faster oftentimes than that actually is happening. Things take a lot longer to take root. And I bet you know that from your own experiences, that you want, whether it's pursuing a new market or turning a company or an organization around, it isn't something that happens in months. It's something that happens in years. And that's the same. I mean, think about where we've come in websites, right? I think about our first website for VisionEdge Marketing in 1999 was a piece of hard-coded, thing that was like tens of thousands of dollars to make 2 pages that did absolutely nothing but sit on the web, right? Tens of thousands of dollars, hard-coded. I could do absolutely nothing with it. And think about, even in the 24 years, we've gone from that to things like Joomla and Pearl, and to WordPress sites and other types of sites, to interactive sites, to things you can do on a site you could never have done before. Right. Think of all the things that we're doing, and we're still learning how to make websites work.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point, and that is marketing doesn't happen between now and a week from Friday. Marketing and getting your message out there and getting your message understood, whether you're starting a company, whether you're growing and continuing the company, or whether you're trying to turn an organization around, you need to be out there putting that message out there through a lot of different channels in a lot of different ways. And it takes time for people to start hearing it. I've been working with the Austin Technology Council for a year now, and we're in the process of doing a reinvent. And I met with a turnaround specialist, and she said, how cute that you think you can do everything in a year. In order to get a message fully turned and to get buy-in, she goes, it's a 3-year process. And I think sometimes tech companies think, oh my God, we need marketing because we need it today. And they mistakenly think that marketing is SEO or social media or followers or whatever. What is your definition of marketing, and why is SEO and things like that just part of it, but not the whole thing?
Okay, I love this question, and thank you for asking it. So we had this conversation many years ago in our company as well, because we named ourselves VisionEdge Marketing, and we were very deliberate. So let's back up for a moment. Peter Drucker in 1954 said the purpose of business is to create a customer. And he said the only 2 things that matter in order to create a customer are marketing and innovation. All right. I happen to believe that. If you fast forward from there to like the time in 1999, which when we were being formed, and I had already been working for several decades in marketing, Phil Kotler came out with a book, and he's kind of considered the father of modern marketing. And he said, the job of marketing is to find, keep, and grow the value of customers. That's the definition. Okay, find, keep, and grow the value of customers. So that ties in very nicely with Peter Drucker's philosophy, right? So it's all about being customer-centric. Tech companies that we have worked with, and I have worked in tech companies in my career, several in my career, plus all the hundreds that we have worked with as part of our company, as part of VisionEdge Marketing. I noticed a couple of interesting personas, and I'll share them with you. And you tell me whether or not you know any of these personas. The persona of the market of the company, where the CEO believes that they are the marketer. They have done all the marketing work. They've worked to put that together. They've hired a salesperson, and now what they really want is someone to come in, implement their vision, and make leads happen for the salespeople, right? And so whatever it takes to do leads. Whether that's events or SEO, make a new website, email campaigns, whatever it might be, their job is just to generate some leads. They don't need to think about anything else because the CEO's got that nailed. Okay, that's one kind. The other kind is the CEO, who's the technical CEO, knows that they need someone to help them figure out the strategy, the value prop, the positioning, the messaging, and they bring somebody in or hire somebody to do that work, and they really haven't done their homework to go out into the market. They have someone come in, but you really need to do your homework. And one of the things that was unique about VisionEdge Marketing when we came into existence is our roots in doing research with, customer research. There wasn't really anybody doing that kind of work, back then, to understand what is, how do customers want to hear it? What's the problem that a customer has? How big is that problem? Where does that fit in their priorities? How are they solving it today? What's working around solving it today? Who are they talking with to solve it? Why are they talking to that company? Why would they talk to us? What would they want in a solution if it was coming from us? Those kinds of questions, right? That's all what we call upstream marketing. And people need to do that work, not just hear what you think your vision is and turn that into a message. And then the third, and so they struggle to get implementation because they didn't do their homework. So people are implementing based on that, but it's not resonating in the market, right? That's another kind of critter. And then, of course, there are those that do hire a really good marketing person who does understand that upstream and downstream need to work together, and that you need to get the upstream right in order to get the downstream to be effective. So those are the three that we run into. More of the first two than the latter, but we do run into them, and they're awesome. Does that resonate with you?
No, it totally does. And I thought of people that I've worked with in places that I've worked where they just think that, marketing better be driving leads. That's all it's about. It's giving the salesperson the next call to make. And certainly that is a end product of marketing, but it's not the only end product of marketing. You're right. Sometimes that's why marketing and sales tend to collide is, in my opinion, sometimes they aren't working for the same purpose. And so they get caught up in this, where's my leads? Hey, we're doing all this stuff. The second one's the one I've seen a lot, which is people who don't do homework. They just let someone on the staff make the decision of this is what the customers want, and then they go all the way down. I see that one a lot. And so I've seen both of them. However, I do want to go back to this whole concept of upstream and downstream marketing, because as you said it, I got really excited. I liked it, but I'm afraid we covered it a little too fast. I want to go back and talk a little bit more for the people listening who have a company who need to do both. They want to be in that third bucket that you talked about, where they're doing things right. They have the right people on and they're doing it for the right reasons. So let's go a little deeper into what is upstream marketing, what is downstream marketing, and what do companies need to know about this?
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. And, one of the places to maybe think about is, and you're really fascinated by that, this Dr. Ram Charan wrote a book, and it's called Profitable Growth is Everybody's Business. It's everyone's business, not everybody, everyone's business. Dr. Ram Charan, Profitable Growth is Everyone's Business. And I attribute him, he taught at Boston University, Northwestern, Harvard. I don't know where he's teaching today. And he really goes into distinguishing upstream from downstream marketing. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can actually go read it from the expert. But I wanted to share with you, I thought you might ask this question, so I actually did a little homework. And he says that upstream marketing is a strategic process. And I love that phrase. It's a strategic process of identifying and fulfilling customer needs. So he is back to our whole premise about customer centricity. And he says that this involves understanding customer segments, analyzing how the customer uses the product or would use the product or service, what is your competitive advantage, why you're better, why you're different, all the things that you and I were talking about that come first. And then he says downstream, which is what everyone is enamored with. And of course, that's where all the glamour and fun is all the things that are really important for the execution of the upstream, like your advertising and your promotion and your brand building and your PR, your events, your content, your video, whatever that might be, right? So that's really how he distinguishes them. And they have to really work together. And they work together. And this is, I thought, an interesting phrase, to motivate customers. So it's about motivation, not just persuasion, but to actually motivate them to action. So action to adopt your product or service. So a key set of measures, which is, again, back to VisionEdge Marketing roots, is were they motivated? Did they take an action? And adoption rate. Did they adopt? So a lot of times we find that the tech companies, particularly the early stage tech companies, get caught up in activity measures. Things like how many people came to our website? How many people opened our email? What's our engagement on our social media? How many fans and followers do we have? How many new leads or forms did we get? Or whatever, right? And they're not really thinking about what they ultimately need to be measuring, which at one end would be motivation and at the other end would be adoption.
I like that. And I like that clarification between the upstream and the downstream and how they have to work together. You need that strategy in place before you can go do the fun, sexy SEO, brand building and stuff like that. You mentioned branding. I can remember, like I said, I've known you a long time. 20 years ago, the hot buzz term in marketing was brand. What's your brand? Everybody, all the companies that were starting were brand builders and all this different things. What is brand and where does it fit into marketing in today's world?
Okay. Another really good question. So ultimately, the definition of a brand is the promise. What is the promise? So you might remember this book from way back when, Trout and Reese. I think that their book came out in the 80s or something, a long time ago. And they talk a lot about brand and the brand promise. So we all know what a brand is. The point is that a brand is a shortcut. You have a problem and you immediately think of the solution and 2 or 3 names will come to you mind. And that is because that brand is connected to that solution and the promise of that brand. So for example, many of us are beginning to travel again. And one of the things we might be thinking of is, where are we going to stay? In the old days, it would just be maybe a couple of choice of hotels.
Yeah, you had the Hyatts, the Marriotts, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton.
Right. But now we have a whole new category, right? Airbnb, VRBO. So they have worked on creating a brand. I don't know if you've watched the Airbnb brand with the categories, right? Mm-hmm. I just saw the latest one, which is on the farming category for people who want to stay at farms. I grew up in farming country. I'm not really sure I'd want to stay in a farm.
I was thinking, I don't know that that's where I want to stay, but that's all right. I'm sure there are people.
I think of that as a lot of work. But I digress. Anyway, my point being, we think when we have something we need to make a decision about, a choice, certain brands come to our mind because those organizations have done a great job of establishing that their brand, their name, and that solution and the promise of what they are going to give you are all connected. Because most people want this shortcut. When you go and you sit across you go into the restaurant and they say, what would you like to drink? And, in some places you might say, I want a Coke. And then they have to say, but we don't have Coke. We have Pepsi. And the person says, in their mind, Coke is whatever soda that you have. Right.
To some people, although not to my wife, she won't drink one of those two. I won't say which one, but
I don't drink either, so it's okay. You can tell Sarah that. I haven't had a soda in forever, but that's another conversation too. My point is, brand is really important because it is a way to get that shortcut, and it is about the promise you make. And so it is really important to have it. And it is a foundation for your marketing, because what is it you're marketing? You are marketing your promise. You're marketing your promise, and your promise is your brand. So that's really important to keep in mind.
So in your book, Fast Track Your Business, you have a short little description that sticks with me that I remember that I like. And that has to do with this idea of when you're writing about marketing, is marketing a small M or is it a capitalized M? And I think that you talked something about how your team was like, Laura, why are you capitalizing marketing in some sentences and not in other sentences? It shouldn't be capitalized. You actually believe that marketing should have a capital M. Why is that?
Okay, so that was a fun conversation. It was very early on. And yes, I was notorious for writing and still am notorious for writing a lot of things. And I always do capitalize the M in certain situations. And I did write about this in the book because it was a really big debate. And it wasn't like a short debate. It went on for a while. And every time I would send something and one of my folks would read it, they would always send it back and they would use track changes, right, later on. And they would always be taking the capital away. And then I would just ignore them. and so we got into this thing. And I say in the book, people are probably laughing because they're wondering, don't you all have anything better to do in Texas and talk about whether to capitalize the M? But it really was a really important conversation. And my people would give me all kinds of examples. So would you capitalize it if we are going, if we write a sentence, we are marketing our new product X, Y, and Z? I would say, of course not. No. You wouldn't capitalize the M in marketing in that instance. And so what I began to help them understand is that there is a difference between a verb and a noun. And that marketing, when it is a noun, is a proper noun and therefore deserves the opportunity to be capitalized, right? It is a function. It is a critical function in an organization.
It is a critical business function. And the companies that forget that, I often think are the ones that struggle. Marketing matters, sales matters, finance matters. All of these business functions matter, and we can't belittle any of them. Marketing is an important business function.
And they all should be capitalized. A function should be capitalized because we might want to finance our next house, in which case it would not be capitalized, the word finance. But when we are talking about the function of finance, which is like essential to keeping a business, solvent, then it's worthy of being capitalized. And that was my whole point, that marketing is responsible for bringing strategy or strategies to the table, ideally, from on my personal perspective, that is data-driven insights, right, that are going to help you make a decision in order to achieve the desired future state. Well, if you're trying to achieve a desired future state, that is worthy of being capitalized, and hence the conversation. I hope that makes sense to some people. It's a little bit off the.
I liked it. It made sense to me, and it resonated with me. So my last question for you is: as we look at this landscape of technology companies in Austin, what do you wish that every company knew about how to improve their marketing?
Okay, so this is a great question. And the best way to begin to think about improving your marketing is for you to understand what are the business outcomes for the company. What will allow the company to declare success in whatever the time horizon is? And if that success can be declared in any number of ways. But if you were going to open up a case of Dom Perignon, what would allow you to make that investment and open up a case of Dom Perignon for your company? And that is what marketing should be helping the company achieve. And today, a lot of companies do not make the connection, a strong enough connection, that marketing is supposed to be connected to the business outcomes, not to the sales team, not to the budget, not to whatever, but to those business outcomes. And if you want marketing to be successful, you need to hold them accountable and have measures to those business outcomes.
Nice. So I want to switch gears here a little bit and talk about Austin. You've been here 40 years. That doesn't make you or I a native. I've been here 32 years. My daughters will tell you that you have to be birthed on the soil to be a native. So we don't.
My husband would say the same. He's a 5th generation Austinite. So yes, he would say it does. My marriage does not count.
That's right. You can become an Irish citizen if you have one Irish grandparent, but it doesn't work that way in Texas. You've got to be born here. But so, all seriousness here. As we look at the changes that Austin has gone through, you were very involved in the early days of the Austin Technology Council, back when it was the Austin Software Council. And so we've seen a lot of changes. Where do you think we've come from, And where do you think we need to be aware? Where is Austin going, and what do we need to be paying attention to make sure we continue to thrive?
Tom, I think back to those olden days, for lack of a better word, the golden days, whatever you want to call them. And I loved the phrase you used in your opening. We had an ecosystem, and it was a very community-oriented ecosystem. And people were extremely helpful, whether that was the Bob Fosters and the Carol Thompsons and the Becky Taylors and the Betty Otter Nickersons. And there was the George Kometskys and the Joel Wiggins and whoever they were. There were so many people that were vital to that ecosystem. And it was really about how do we help each other be successful, and how do we help grow Austin, the Austin technology community. And we thought of ourselves as a community, and we were very inclusive. Long before the word inclusive it means what it is today. People came, people built companies, and people here were pretty helpful. And if you needed a connection, and I still can remember having a conversation just a couple of years ago with someone new to Austin, having a quick cup of coffee with them, and they needed something. And I said, well, I know so-and-so. Have you met so-and-so? No, I haven't met so-and-so. So, well, I'll make an introduction for you to so-and-so. And their comment was, you will? Well, of course I will. This is Austin. That was Austin in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. And I do think we have lost some of that willingness to be helpful, that sort of everyone, we can be competitors, but we can be friendly about it. But this whole notion of that ecosystem and the community, and that we're here to make it be better for everyone, I think we got a little away from that. And I'm hoping that will come back. But the world of Austin has changed. What was a semiconductor and software town sprinkled in with some the medical device industry has really changed. And, we need to recognize that and adjust accordingly.
Well, I mean, it's good. I think, some of the changes are great because we have such a diverse tech ecosystem now. There's so many different types of technologies that are growing and being birthed and being expanded and innovated here in Austin. But I think you are right that, some of that early days, there used to not be walls. And so you used to see the people like the George Kometskys would sit down and, have a conversation with someone who was in sales for, a law firm or whatever. I don't think I was with the law firm yet when I met him, but I had the opportunity to meet him, and we sat down and had a conversation. And there was this ability that it wasn't curated by job titles, size of company, level of success. And I think we need to remember that there's a time and a place for curated meetings of small groups of people who are just like you. But there's also a time where we have to tear down those walls, and everybody has to be willing to have those conversations, because I think that community, collaboration, and conversations can solve all problems. And I say it every week on the show because that'll be one of our final questions. But I really do believe that when we lead with the fact that, hey, I'm going out to an Austin Technology Council event, or I'm going to a Chamber of Commerce event, or I'm attending Austin Women in Technology or Association for Corporate Growth. When we go to one of those events, if we remember, hey, I'm showing up not to find my next sale, but I'm showing up as a part of this community who's willing to collaborate and willing to talk to everybody, I think everybody wins. And so I think you are right. I think we've lost a little bit. I think we're still better than most places when it comes to accessibility, but I think we need to be aware as a community to make sure we hang on to that.
I agree with you. And of course, some of that is the changing of the guard or the passing of the baton. Some of those people are gone. And so those of us who are still here, we need to be a part of making that, continuing that. That's part of our responsibility. And maybe I, as a member of that ecosystem, I need to do a better job of that. But I'll never forget Gene Lowenthal, again, one of those people who I have nothing but admiration and respect for. Taking my calls and meeting me for coffee, and always gracious about it and answering my questions. And I said, how can I ever thank you? And he said, do the same when your turn comes.
Yep.
Do the same. And I have never turned down a request from anybody for a conversation.
Carol Thompson taught me the same thing. And that was, be willing to sit down and have a conversation. Now, because of who she was during the 90s, she was one of the most sought after people. She had this thing that some people who she didn't know, she hadn't heard of, she would charge you to meet with her because she was a consultant who charged hourly. But the thing we didn't know was after the meeting, she would not take your check. It was just a matter, of seeing that. I can always remember sitting down with her. I wanted some advice. She gave me some advice. I went to give her the money I'd agreed to. And she goes, I'm not taking your money. She goes, just make sure you always pay it forward for the rest of your life. And that has always stuck with me as such a good example of, you may need to have some walls sometimes. Some people, obviously there's people who are more celebrities in the tech community. They're going to get more calls. They can't say yes to everybody. But for most of us, I talked to somebody one time who goes, people call, they want to pick my brain. She goes, I hate that. I always say no. And I'm like, how many calls do you get? And she was like, 2 a month. And I'm like, well, that's about what I get. I can do 2 calls a month, and now we have Zoom. You don't even have to drive to have some of these calls. You don't even drive to the coffee shop. You can do it by Zoom. So I go down a tangent, but I agree with you that I think that we need to make sure we continue that, because I think Austin's future is strong, but we're based on that community. So that's a great transition. I believe community conversation and community collaboration and conversation can solve all problems. Which one of those words resonates with you the most, and why?
I would say collaboration, because I think that if you have the other two are a key part of collaboration. So I'm cheating, I realize, in my answer. But when you are collaborative, you have to listen. When you are collaborative, you are part of a community. When you are collaborative, you have to have a conversation. So for me, it's collaboration. And I wanted to add one more thing. I worked for an amazing person in my 14-year career at Motorola. I worked for Gary Daniels for 11 of my 14 years. And he was a remarkable person. Sadly, we lost him a number of years ago. But one of the things he reminded all of us of early on is always return someone's phone call. And this is a very important message for everyone. It might be, I know we are inundated with email, but his point was, always return someone's phone call, always respond to someone's email, because you will never know down the road who that person is going to be. They may be your next big customer. They may be your next big partner. They may be your next boss. So the point he was trying to make is, be careful about, making judgment calls based on where someone is today. Be open-minded that where they are today is probably not where they're going to be tomorrow.
That's right. And I think we're better off when we don't automatically prejudge everybody we meet. So amen to that advice. I think that's good. So my last question, you've lived here a long time. Your husband's multiple generation Austinite. If somebody came from out of town and they were just going to be here for a weekend, where's the one place you would take them? Whether it's an attraction, a historical place, or a restaurant, where's the one place you would take someone from out of town?
Oh gosh, only one?
Only one.
I would probably want to know their interests, but maybe the Bullock Museum.
Oh, good choice. I don't think we've heard that one before, but the Bullock Museum's a good choice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Laura Patterson, thank you so much for being a guest on Austin Tech Connect. Any final words?
No, thank you for having me. And I hope this inspires somebody to think a little bit differently. And if it does, then it was definitely worth the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. Hey, is your company a member of the Austin Technology Council? We would like your support. We would like your voice to be added to the conversations that we're having. We welcome everybody in the tech ecosystem to help us grow and regrow the Austin Technology Council. And in order to be a grassroots organization, we need you, because you and your team, you are the grassroots of our ecosystem. So check out the Austin Technology Council today at austintechnologycouncil.org.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.